members of the Honorable House of Representatives and members of the Senate. It is virtually impossible for me to find words that are eloquent enough to express the sense of pride I feel as I prepare to depart from the public stage by this occasion and the tributes which have been paid to me this afternoon from both sides and both houses of Parliament. I do not believe that in all the years since 1962 there has ever been a joint session of both houses where members of both the Senate and the House can be heard at the same time. Indeed, those of us who once belonged to the upper house and were promoted by being kicked downstairs to the House of Representatives remember too well the occasions when we are assembled for the opening of Parliament and we have as the lesser folk to wait outside until the bigger folks invite us to join them. I must say it gave me some sense of satisfaction that today I was able to pass them all gathered outside, and it needed a motion to allow them to enter this house and to be heard. There has never been a gathering like this, including so many of our past parliamentarians. Those who served when I first entered Parliament, those who have served during my tenure as Prime Minister, and even those, and especially those I want to welcome and acknowledge, those who served in either chamber during the period when I was not a member of the legislature at all. I hope, however, Mr. Speaker, I'll be pardoned for singling out for special mention our former Governor General and himself a legendary parliamentarian, the Most Honorable Sir Howard Cook. Today is a day when we are giving out secrets. The truth can now be told. On at least one occasion, when he was present at a party political function, as a founding member of the party. In fact, when we were serving our 60th, when we were celebrating our 60th anniversary. Fortunately, I was standing really to his immediate left. And when a certain song commenced and we came to land of my birth, I had to assault the Governor General by making sure that his hand did not appear. Mention was made of the fact that the Most Honorable Edward Siaga first became a member of Parliament on the 10th of April 1962. And as I think I have said to him since then, it's been the best reminder of the consequences of defeat and how not to spend one's birthday. Because I very well recall having assembled the food, the drink, and the appropriate company to celebrate that birthday. The food went untasted. The liquor had to be left for another day's consumption. And I have concluded from that, it is always better to win than to lose. Mr. Speaker, we must take note that present among us are representatives of the judiciary at the highest level. A profession from which I happen to come in terms of the law, but a profession to which I do not intend to return. Our privy councillors are also in attendance, and it is almost impossible for me to believe that sitting in the well of the court is my son, Richard, who seems to think that politics is an affliction which must be avoided at all costs. As has been acknowledged, this is not an obituary. I am not prepared to say that the best is yet to come, but you can't do a final summation until the journey of life is complete. And certainly, I have not heard, coming from anybody who has spoken, an invitation to reconsider my decision, which is final, irrevocable, and irreversible. I'm going to tell another story. In 1992, on my way to party headquarters, as I was about to enter my car and drive down the gateway, I received a note from the then chairman of the Jamaica Labour Party, commiserating with me on my departure from the cabinet. And it was in that note there was contained the phrase which I used at party headquarters. He said, "Remember General MacArthur." And I left knowing for sure what the headline you know, Mr. Speaker, I got a little uncertain exactly what Ernie Smith was going to say. He didn't go into some areas where Portia was not afraid to tread. But he did say something about don't count your money when you're sitting at the table. He didn't go on to the other part of it. There's time enough for counting when the day is done. And I've always applied that to politics. That's why when I had the final meeting of the NEC to announce the date for the elections, I said to them, don't watch the crowd, because there are some people who were appearing at 4 places at different times, provided there were no clashes of presence in a particular area. And I've always said, you don't know what the outcome will be until the final night, when each box is counted and a winner is declared. Let me, Mr. Speaker, thank not only those who have made tributes, and I suspect that the new clock notwithstanding, everybody would have wished, if given the opportunity, to have said something and to make a contribution to this particular resolution. But some of it need not be done in public, and if there are any incursions into a house in the constituency of North Central St. Andrew, the Member of Parliament need have no fear that it is because of politics. It is reverting to those days when other persons on that side had no difficulty in occupying portions of my house while I was away and until I returned. I understand, and I fully understand. Mr. Speaker, he knows what I mean, and he knows why I said it. It was that brilliant Caribbean novelist and Nobel Prize laureate, V.S. Naipaul, who said that a politician is more than a man with a cause. He is driven by some little hurt, some little incompleteness. The true politician finds his skills and his completeness only in success. But for the privilege and opportunity to serve, Mr. Speaker, for nearly 40 years in the service of this country, in various capacities, in both houses of Parliament and on both sides of the House, and particularly the last 14 years as Prime Minister of Jamaica, I would like to give thanks to the Almighty and express my profound and abiding gratitude to the people of Jamaica for affording me this distinct privilege. My entry into politics began at school, but when I first entered active political life, it was during my student days at the Mona campus of the University College of the West Indies. It was as a consequence of the visionary leadership of Norman Manley and the cherished values and ideals which were embodied in the principles of the party he founded. And I remember very well his acceptance speech back in January of 1955, when he declared that as Chief Minister, he was taking into his hands the case of the people of Jamaica before the bar of history against poverty and need, the case of my country for a better life and freedom in our land. That declaration of faith aroused in me a passion to serve and to recognize that as a people, we cannot stand on the side of indifference, oblivious of what separates right and wrong, good and evil, cruelty and compassion. For indifference is an end in itself from which no nation can hope to fulfill its tryst with destiny. I expect, Mr. Speaker, that the years I have spent in the service of this nation will one day be dispassionately and objectively analyzed. And whatever the final judgment upon my legacy, whatever the verdict of history, I will take comfort in the knowledge that in giving service to my fellow citizens, I have done so with a clean hand and a pure heart. Those many years in public life can be described as an odyssey, one in which I was a witness in and a participant later in many watershed events over this period. I remember well the crowning achievement of independence for Blessed Land in 1962, which symbolized a renewed spirit from which the hopes and aspirations of a people were to be fulfilled. Others, for reasons of their own, have averted any reference to the decade of the 70s. I cannot do so as I depart. In the 70s, I became intimately involved in that vanguard movement to rebuild the national spirit because it bespoke the cause of social justice, equality, and a better life for all Jamaicans. I believe we all had a sense of the urgency of the moment that after the first decade of independence, our generation was summoned to give substance to the fulfillment of the dreams and aspirations of the Jamaican people. One thing of which I am certain, all of us in the 70s, led by Michael Norman Manley, were fully committed to the task of reconstructing the social and economic life of Jamaica. That task still is continuing, but it is a task which can only succeed if we as leaders understand our role as trustees, as servants of the people in whose hands rests the power to achieve. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, I have had no difficulty in my personal relations with members on either side of the aisle. We are all here to serve. And for all of us, service requires a great deal of personal sacrifice. And as I have had to deal with any matter in office, whether legislation or a response to any request from a member of parliament, I use one simple litmus test. If you were not the Prime Minister and you made the request, how would you like to be treated? And if you answer that by saying, treat each member of parliament as you would like to be treated if you were not the Prime Minister, then you have a simple answer which determines how you deal with every member of this honorable House. We have been involved in building a nation, and we mustn't forget that 40 years in the life of building a nation is a comparatively short period of time. And there are some things, Mr. Speaker, that we tend to take for granted. One of them is that truly in Jamaica we have an expression of our motto, out of many, one people. And you may not understand how invaluable that is. But there are many places today which are rent with ethnic conflict and where divisions of race and religion are appearing to an extent which make it impossible to get unity of purpose and of action within the nation state. And we must guard this reputation zealously. Mr. Speaker, I don't intend today to go through what we have achieved. I would simply say among the most enduring is what we have done about our parliamentary system. We have opened it to make it more participatory, not just between both sides of the House, but also to allow a greater level of interface with the public and the citizens that we serve. I believe that we have expanded the foundations of governance by expanding opportunities through a governance structure, one which is inclusive, participatory, and robust. And we have built a sense of community and cooperation among the Jamaican people. We have had our difficulties, economic in some cases, and social in a number of areas. But I think insofar as the economy is concerned, we have laid the foundation for building an economy which is competitive with market forces. We have invested in our human capital and the infrastructure, and we are beginning to reap the dividends of this. We have undertaken fundamental changes of our laws to make it possible for the security forces to do their work, but without undermining the fundamental precepts of our constitutional rights. In all of this, we have managed to maintain the independence of our judicial system, and we have kept it totally insulated from political interference so as to allow justice to prevail. Mr. Speaker, others have mentioned in passing what has been done to our road network, to our tourism expansion, to our seaports. All of these are not ends in themselves, but catalysts for the economic development and social mobility which we seek for our country at this time. Of course, the world we inherited 44 years ago when we became independent has changed inexorably. We are being challenged by some critical imperatives in global trade that will affect the freedom we exercise over our affairs, primarily in the areas of international trade. One of the accomplishments about which I feel most proud is our determination to have ended our borrowing relationships with the International Monetary Fund when we did, so that we could ourselves determine how we allocate our capital resources. We have done a great deal in improving integrity within Parliament, and perhaps the area where we have achieved most is in terms of electoral reform. Let us take note of the fact, Mr. Speaker, that the last election was the closest in recent history, not just only in terms of seats, but in terms of margins within constituencies. And there was such confidence in the electoral system that not one single election petition has been filed. I am pleased that we were able to lay on the table of this House the bill to create an election commission, an electoral commission directly answerable to the people through a committee of parliament. I'd hoped it would have been passed during my watch. That is not possible, but it will be done in, I'm sure, the next session of Parliament. I'm told that it actually has not been laid. It has been approved by Cabinet, and it will be formally laid tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I think it was Minister Whiteman who referred to my ability to curse politically. I would say, and I would admit, that before I became Prime Minister, I could give as good as I could get. But I took a decision when I became the Prime Minister, and that is, we had to move away from a pattern of confrontation to a pattern of civility. And there are times when I have taken long to take a decision because I wanted to weigh all the considerations. And there are times when I've taken an initial position and reversed it because in my judgment it was not contributing to the reduction of political tribalism and the unity of the nation and the singleness of purpose that we as a country must achieve. When the Most Honorable Edward Seaga was leaving this Parliament, I expressed my discomfort that we had not been able to pass legislation to which we were both committed, including the Charter of Rights and certain changes in our constitutional structure. I regret that despite all the efforts, we still have yet to conclude those portions of legislation. But I hope that under the new leadership, the members of both houses will see to it that we complete the process of decolonization by moving away from the monarchical system of government to set up a republican system and install a president as head of state whose authority is derived directly from the people of the nation. And though, Mr. Speaker, I know it is a subject of some contention, I could not complete this presentation to hope that now that the Caribbean Court of Justice has been established with an original jurisdiction, we are going to get the necessary consensus to have it as our final appellate court and thereby finally repatriate our justice system into the competent, capable hands of our jurists and then complete the circle of decolonization. For one reason or another, too many of us have sought to downplay the significant impact these constitutional changes can have on the psyche of the Jamaican people. These are changes which signify the maturing of a people and symbolize the unity and strength of the Jamaican nation. And I beseech the new leaders on both sides of the House to commit themselves to having these changes take place before the next general elections are constitutionally due. Notice what I have said. I must not fetter anyone with any right or shackle anyone from doing what is necessary in their judgment at the appropriate time. Mr. Speaker, as I depart from the political scene, I sense that the future is beckoning us as a nation to new possibilities of hope for our people amidst the challenges of globalization. I have no reason to despair over the future of this country, for there are many things for which we ought to be truly thankful. Lest we forget, Mr. Speaker, nearly all the good things we now have were once the things we had long hoped for. So, Mr. Speaker, while I reflect on the past as a source of knowledge, I affirm my abiding faith in the future as a source of hope, and in what noted Caribbean poet Braithwaite calls the regeneration of the human spirit to lift Jamaica upward and onward into a new dawn. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of As You Like It, and an immortal passage from Shakespeare. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Mr. Speaker, I am taking my exit before I get to what Shakespeare described as the last scene of all, that ends this strange eventful history, which is second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. And whether it is the music or the attraction to the sports or whatever else that is found to be sufficiently alluring, I hope to find the time and the energies to engage in these activities. Mr. Speaker, there are those who have made a habit, not just of criticizing, which we must expect in any democracy, but of doing so in a very personal and vituperative fashion. And I rely on the words of Ben Jonson: calumnies are answered best with silence. And especially in the last few days, I am determined that nothing is going to be said or done or drawn which will force me to depart from the dignity and the decorum which I think are essential attributes of whoever holds the office of Prime Minister and whoever serves as a member at whatever level in this honorable House. Let me pay tribute to the many persons who have been a source of inspiration and encouragement during my political life. The early influence of our national hero, the Right Excellent Norman Manley, who through the courage of his conviction and generosity of spirit has led a life in the service of this nation, which is distinguished by a deep and abiding belief in political morality as the foundation of political practice. Some of those on the other side, especially the more recent members of this House, will be surprised to hear me say this. I learned no less, and I wish to pay tribute to the memory of the Right Excellent William Alexander Bustamante. Senator Johnson mentioned that his grandfather taught at Cocoon Blenheim. My grandfather was Bustamante's headmaster, And when Bustamante discovered who I was, he said to me, "Son, you come from good family stock, but you are in the wrong party." I resisted his invitation, but I observed him very carefully, especially during my days as an organizer in St. Elizabeth and Western Jamaica. I remember today, Mr. Speaker, in a very special way, two of those who have gone before me. I speak of my great friend, Hugh Lawson Shearer. And of course, I speak of Michael Manley, under whose extraordinary leadership I served for many years, both in the political party and in government. There are many others who have also made an impact on my life and my service to the country. My parliamentary colleagues, past and present, on both sides of the House, whose wit, wisdom, and diligence resulted in the making of good laws and a robust parliament. In speaking of my constituents, Mr. Speaker, when I was reminded today that I am the only member of Parliament from Eastern Westmoreland on this side of the House who has not had to be disciplined for the removal of the mace.
There's no reason anymore for it.
I had a counselor in Darliston whose favorite words to me usually were, "Lawyer, the dice cost." But no. The late Sidney Watt, otherwise known as Bud. I recall, Mr. Speaker, that when Max Carey suddenly died, and I was being summoned to go to the constituency, there is a person who was at that time a vice president of the constituency and who aspired to succeed Max Carey. And he confided in Dudley Thompson that he had every intention of replacing Max Carey, to which Dudley Thompson retorted, "Well, you will have to discuss how the two of you can hold in the same coffin with the undertaker." I made a pledge then, when I went to the constituency, that I would remain in that constituency. And therefore, when I had the disappointment in 1980, and I was offered other constituencies, I decided to fulfill my commitment and to remain there. And I know that there'll be another by-election. I know it will be vigorously contested, but I have no doubt whatsoever as to what the outcome will be, because the foundations have been well and truly laid. But, Mr. Speaker, I have to thank my constituents and my executive, who over the years have allowed me the latitude and their understanding to deal with international matters of state and, on occasion, international affairs. I'm pleased that so many heads of our ministries, permanent secretaries, cabinet secretary are here. I want to thank them and through them salute all those who have worked with me over these past few years in the discharge of my responsibility. Let me acknowledge the contribution made by representatives from the various religious denominations and groups, members of the various private sector bodies, the trade union movement, NGOs, and other civic and community groups. And most of all, let me thank the hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans from all walks of life, whose prayers, whose wise counsel, whose guidance and encouragement have fed on the dreams of hope from which a quality society will rise.
Hear, hear.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I bid farewell to the Parliament and the people of Jamaica. You will have a letter from me on Friday. I will indeed be following the affairs of government, and as an ordinary citizen, I remain committed to share with the country, the region, the hemisphere, the developing world, whatever experience I may have accumulated. There's a lot of speculation as to what I will be doing and what I will not be doing. I do not aspire to be a university don, but only last week I received notification that I am being awarded the Gran Cruz de Oro civil class by the government of Spain. So I will then be Don Patterson also. Above all, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Almighty for having blessed me with good health and the strength to carry through on the next leg of my journey. The torch must now pass on to the next generation, for that journey continues. I pray God's richest blessing upon our new leaders and the people of this country. I challenge our future leaders and those to come to let not our hope be smothered in doubt and fear. A new and glorious opportunity exists for a rekindling of the creative and indomitable spirit that so much defines the character of the Jamaican people. A new chapter is closing between the Most Honorable Edward Seaga and myself. But for 3 months, either of us have been in the cabinet of Jamaica from 1962 to the present. It's a brand new ball game. The promise of a new day is revealing itself. I charge you to go forth with the courage and confidence that must seize the moment and make it count, so that in the name of all those who have gone before us and those who have served the nation in a variety of ways, we can vow to thee, our country, all earthly things above, entire and whole and perfect, this service of our love. God bless you all. God bless this Parliament, and may God abundantly bless Jamaica, land we love.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the motion be adopted.
Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Motion carried.
job's not over yet.
This is good.